Participants, okay.
Is that it?
Hello, everybody. We'll be starting our webinar soon, so just bear with us while everybody logs in. You're very welcome, Dieter and Gavin and John and Paul, Peter, Usman. You're all very welcome. It's just coming up 1 o'clock now, guys. So we'll kick off. We'll give it probably another couple of minutes. Kick off at about 1:02. If you quickly want to grab a cup of coffee. Okay, just doing a voice check, Peter.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good afternoon.
Okay, folks, give it just another 60 seconds and then we'll kick off. So 1 or 2 people just coming into the room now. Folks, just before I do kick off, I'm going to introduce myself and Peter to yourselves and in a second, and then just kind of talk about very quickly over the next 45 minutes. We're going to address the growing power of IoT data in building sustainability. So really looking forward to sharing our insights. And the last 15 minutes, I think it's from previous experiences we've had, we're going to do a Q&A. You will see in your control panel at the bottom of the thing, there is a Q&A. As questions arise in your mind, please type them in there and we will, we've Varun there and we'll be moderating that. We'll wait till after the presentation, but we will come back to your questions and kick that open for everyone for discussion, okay? So I'll just move on here now. I just want to welcome Peter and myself. We're co-founders of ZiggyTec. Same name, but we're not related. And you're very welcome to the webinar today. Peter's going to talk a bit about the requirements for sustainability data, and that fits in very closely to the concept behind this webinar, which is basically using IoT and getting the data then for sustainability projects. We're going to look at some case studies and then we're going to have a Q&A. So you're all very welcome, and going to hand this over now in a minute. But first of all, just going to do a quick poll. And there's a reason we're doing this poll, because I think everybody will enjoy the results here. But in 2020, a report by the European Commission found that buildings and construction were responsible for what percentage of the entire block's total energy usage. So if you go to, if people could click on that, and we'll give about 10 seconds then to see how many people get the right or wrong answer. Okay, very good. We'll give it another few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll there now, and I'm going to share the results. So, Peter.
Okay, Lucker, thanks very much. So you shared the results there, Kieran, have you?
Yes, we're up at 13, 81% of people said 40%, and 20% more or less of people said 14%.
Yeah, well, I suppose the answer is, most people have got the answer right. The answer is 40% of the EU's energy usage relates to the buildings, construction and operations, which is, it's a massive amount. And it seems that most of you really understand that. And I suppose it's not surprising then that it's not surprising that people are so interested in getting sustainable data from their buildings. So it's not surprising people are interested in sustainability data, and the drive for this comes from various factors. So for years, people have been gathering data for building benchmarking. Things like GRESB, LEEDs, BREEAM WELL, and all that drove requirements for sustainability data. Moving on from that, carbon reporting has come in. People had to gather their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. So scope 1 emissions are the emissions directly that come out of buildings. So if they're burning gas in buildings, that's creating CO2, and that's your scope 1 carbon emissions. Scope 2 emissions are indirect emissions from electricity primarily. So again, if you use electricity in the building, there is generally an associated CO2 carbon footprint associated with that electricity. Now, you might be lucky enough to generate your own electricity on the rooftops, or have a special deal with a wind farm where you're bringing electricity directly in. But more often than not, you do have some level of carbon emissions associated with your electricity. What we've noticed, though, what's really making it difficult for data and sustainability data is scope 3 emissions. So we're now in the situation, not alone does an owner and a landlord of a building have to report on their own direct emissions, scope 1 and 2, they have to report on all the emissions, all the electricity usage of all their tenants, and that's their scope 3 emissions. And that's turned into be a massive task. ESG reporting has really come into vogue, and we've seen a lot of big companies reporting on their ESG performance over the last number of years. And ESG is widening the data requirements beyond kind of energy, gas, water usage to things such as indoor air quality. And they all feature, it's all part of the S of the ESG reporting, they all feature in reports. And then finally, I suppose the big beast coming down the track is EU taxonomy. And EU taxonomy is going to be far more important than ESG. And that's because EU taxonomy is regulation, and the regulation stretches to 2,000 pages. It's very big and it's mandatory, and it's going to cover 50,000 of large companies directly, but indirectly it's going to cover an awful lot of us, because we all ultimately often feed in and work for and subcontract for some of these really big companies. And it's going to be the driver for quality data. We're going to need quality data for all of these factors. So like and data, it's not just any old data will do. We need quality data. And our definition of quality data is that it's consistent, accessible, auditable, and timely. And what do I mean by consistent? I mean that the data, there's a steady, consistent data stream. It's not that, well, I might have the bill from this month and I mightn't have it from that month, and there was a reading taken there and there wasn't a reading taken there. It needs to be consistent, otherwise it's not quality data. It needs to be accessible. It's a fact that sometimes is missed by people. The data needs to be accessible by everyone that needs it. So it's not just on a BMS in the basement of in a building. It needs to be accessible by head office. It needs to be accessible by all the people that in the ecosystem, in the ESG ecosystem, that need to get access to that data to report on it. And like even the basic things like EU taxonomy law requires that all the data is machine readable format, which means it needs to be in a structured database. So it's not just it needs to be in a glossy ESG report, it needs to be in machine readable format. And that takes work to get it there. It needs to be auditable. This data is like, it's like your financial report. It's like the way financial data needs to be auditable. all your ESG data needs to be auditable. You need to be able to prove where you got it from, the processes around it, and how you check that it's right. And timely. Timely is a really important thing. To make real changes in our sustainable infrastructure, we need to have proper data, not stale data, not finding out what our electricity was last month, like takes a month to get that data, is of less use than knowing, well, I know what is happening today in my building and I know what's been used, because you can take action in that case. So this probably leads on very well to the Internet of Things, IoT, right? So it started with a definition, which I took off the internet. The IoT is the interconnection via the internet of electronic devices embedded in everyday objects, enable them to send and receive data. So it's all about replacing manual recording with automatic measurement. And, you know, thanks to IoT, it is now possible to get much better quality data and far more cost effectively than the old traditional method of sending a person around with a clipboard writing down data. It's here now. The innovations within IoT has dramatically brought down the cost and improved the processes and improved how we can get data out of buildings, out of the basement of buildings and into the cloud. So I'll go on and give a few examples. Like these are just the mundane examples of the type of IoT data that is so important. You know, it's water meter readings taken with the mortar meter down in the basement, electricity meter readings, occupancy, are there people at that desk or are there not? What's the air quality in your building? And lastly, you know, safety equipment, you know, is the safety equipment there? Is it being used? If a defibrillator has been used, you want to know it's been used. And that again feeds into general sustainability and ESG reporting. Now, if you go on, Kieran, there's a number of important factors to consider when selecting IoT. You know, IoT comes in many, many flavors. There's so many devices out there. I just thought I'd share with you what we think are some really important considerations. Ultra low power devices are really important. Like there's loads of technology out there, like mobile phone technologies that are very power hungry, okay? As we all know, our mobile phone might last a day, sometimes a few days if we're very good, but these devices require mains power. That makes it a no-no in installing. You need ultra low power devices that can run off, that don't have to run off mains power. IoT should have radio communication with deep indoor penetration. You know, the technology needs to be able to get through the steel and concrete in our buildings. And the device, like if the device requires wiring for communication, it's very difficult and it makes the project very expensive. You need radio communication. It's really important to have an independent network, a proper IoT network, because the data needs to be encrypted, needs to be protected from jamming and hacking, and it needs to be separate from your corporate system. You know, you can't use your Wi-Fi. It jeopardizes your corporate system. You need an independent, secure IoT network. And finally, the data, you know, our belief is the data has to be in the cloud. You need to get it into the cloud, because if you get it out of the basement of your building into the cloud, it is far more valuable because it needs to feed various other systems. And finally, this is my last slide. I just come into if there's 4 things to get right when you're installing an IoT project in your building, these are them. First of all, make sure these devices are self-powered either by long life batteries, solar power, inductive charging. You can't rely on main supply. It's just too problematic and it's too expensive and it slows down the rollout of the equipment. You have to have a communication over secure, low power, wide area IoT network. There are many of them out there. Sigfox and LoRa are 2 of the bigger ones out there, but there are plenty of other ones. There's some proprietary ones and closed networks as well. You need to make sure that the data is collected, processed, encrypted, and securely stored in the cloud. And finally, you have to ensure that the customers can get this anywhere in the world and they can get this through a web interface or an open API. That's what makes the data valuable. That's that people can get at it. So I'm going to move on to our second poll today, and we'll start the poll, and it's to ask you, are IoT devices being used to make your building smarter, safer, and sustainable in your workplace? If we'd open that poll now.
It's just interesting to see how many people now will say that IoT is being used in their buildings. So yeah, we've got a good response there. So I'm going to end that poll in about 5 seconds. I'm going to share results. So 62% of people are saying yes, that they are using IoT devices within their building. And so it's interesting.
That's quite a high number. It's good to see.
Yeah, it is. And then 1 in 4 aren't. So that's so this kind of is obviously very relevant to yourselves, you know. I want to show you a few case studies maybe, because I think with the case studies we actually get, these are live projects that we're doing for some clients, and I think you'll see here. Now, this may seem pretty straightforward, but this is actually what, you know, heating bills, energy bills, we're seeing the prices doubling over the winter time, and
more than doubling.
More than doubling, yes.
Yeah.
So we have a situation here where we have a client. They were used to power up their heating and ventilation systems at 6 a.m. By using the IoT devices, they were able to show that the appropriate temperature and the volatile organic compound levels could be achieved within 1 hour of powering up their heating and HVAC system, okay? So they actually changed their scheduling to start at 7:30 a.m. So they were saving 1.5 hours of power. So, you know, you can actually make these small little changes using IoT devices, battery operated, that, you know, devices, wireless devices in your building to start making these informed decisions. This is another one. This was a building there down by the Liffey actually, and it was the actual property manager. When they logged in, they were able to see that, well, hold on now, my commercial building is closed at 9 p.m. at night, so why am I using so many liters of water? So they identified very quickly a leak. And again, this was IoT devices on the water meters, a bit like in the picture that Peter showed you earlier. And very quickly that leak was fixed, saving money, and then you can see got back to normal operation then again. This is important because there's a lot of compliance out there and a lot of the compliance that we find within the building regs are, you know, we can actually automate a lot of them now. We couldn't have done it 10 years ago as the technology wasn't there with battery life and that, but that has all changed now. So we can actually, this is a great case in point of where sensors are used to measure the temperature in the hot cold pipes of all your taps. And this was a project that was deployed to 150 sites in Europe. And there was 3 benefits there by having that data in the cloud with some smart software. First of all, there was a labor savings. So, I mean, you had a man in a van going around different countries, different buildings, different companies doing that for them. And there was a savings of approximately 700K per annum on physical labor costs by automating this whole compliance around Legionella and getting all the water pipe temperatures. And the water savings, previously every tap was being run for at least 5 minutes a month, and 95% of all flushing was eliminated. So there was money to be saved there in terms of water savings. And the energy savings alone, when you think of when you do run a tap, a lot of hot water then is going down the drain. So it was saving energy, and that had a really big reduction on the carbon footprint. They were able to put that into hundreds of tons of carbon per annum. So it's these, you know, there's a whole ESG analogy here. Also, we have air quality, very topical, trying to get people back to work. a lot of people enticing back to work, employee wellness. This is all around the ESG again. And here are sensors, like we were doing reports for clients, and we were able to say, ZiggyTec, we were able to identify that at 2 p.m. every day in this building, they were using a meeting room, and the CO2 levels were peaking above what we'd call normal levels. And they were peaking to about 1400 ppm. So we were able to suggest to the client that a simple fix for this was that they reduce the occupancy. And the reason for this meeting was they were having a breakfast meeting in with the New York at 9 a.m. New York, 2 p.m. Irish. And they were able to reduce the occupancy level in this room just from 10 people to 6 people. And
it was a very interesting outcome. And there was another client, Kieran, that we were dealing with last week, where during COVID, they had put the fresh air dampers on 100% fresh air coming in. And obviously that has a very, very significant energy impact. You know, it's good for health, but it's not great for energy, particularly if you don't have good heat recovery on the exhausted air, which they didn't have. But thanks to monitoring the indoor air quality, they've been able to progressively reduce the amount of fresh air coming in to get the optimum point where, yes, the CO2 levels are managed within the building, but their energy, the energy they've saved has been quite substantial by doing that, as you'd expect if you're not continually bringing in outdoor air.
Yeah, very good point. And well, we've lots of cases like that, but it's like, you know, how can you make any decisions? You do need the data, and it's getting your data in, you know, reliable, accurate, consistent data. So they were the few kind of case studies just wanted to go through with you. What we wanted to do was kind of open it up to Q&A there. We have 20 odd participants in this. So if somebody would like to kick off a Q&A question, then we're more than happy to take it. So I'm just going to open up the Q&A there. So if you want to raise your hand or type in any questions. Okay, we have, what's your vision for the future of IoT and building sustainability? So that's Peter.
No, IoT. So it's about instrumenting up your building to get really good insights and really timely insights into what's happening. The challenge for people managing buildings is that we're on a trajectory where we need to reduce the energy usage and the energy consumption by 50%. And that's really challenging, you know. We've done some of the low-hanging fruit, like, you know, replacing lighting with LED, absolutely fabulous technology, but that's largely done. The hard yards are yet to come, you know, and there's various things that's going to do that. Some of it, you know, will be deep retrofits of building, but some of it is operational stuff where you need data insights to improve it. And what you gave earlier on, Kieran, was a very good example of that client who reduced their HVAC. You know, in a building, when you think about it, the majority of energy today in your average office is used to heat or cool or filter the air. So air is a really, really important component in a building, and measuring and monitoring the air, checking that we're not over ventilating buildings, that we're not overheating them in the winter or overcooling them in the summer, all, you know, will all significantly help the sustainability agenda.
Okay, thanks, Peter. John has put in, he just said, all your points are 100% correct, reference the need for data. Then it just says it's difficult to, I don't know, John, you might want to finish that off in another sentence. Someone anonymous, how do you think IoT would impact the HVAC sector?
I think IoT will be a huge benefit to the HVAC sector, because you're going to see, like, I was on with a client yesterday, and we're measuring their floors, again, air quality in their floors, and we can identify spots where it's really bad. High temperatures in this case, there's a lot of solar again in the building, but that's down to their fan coil units. There's several they could correlate the bad fan coil units with the bad air quality in those sectors of the building. So I think it's really going to help the HVAC sector, because it's going to drive the need for change, drive the need for people to improve and maintain their HVAC systems.
Okay, and the question, what got ZiggyTec into IoT in the first place?
You take that, Karen.
Yeah, basically, we got involved with IoT because we actually had an FM facilities manager out there, and they had this big desire we solved a problem. That's always how you get into business. So we solved a problem that they were trying to get accurate, reliable data out of tenanted commercial buildings. You may have, say, 10, 15 tenants in a commercial building, and they were sick and tired of trying to ring these tenants to get the bills, etc. So they wanted a cost-effective way of getting data from the electricity meters into the cloud, and hence, we solved that using IoT, because it had to be cost-effective. So, sending in an electrician and trying to run cabling, etc., wasn't going to be a cost-effective way of doing it. And there's big, heavy-duty engineering companies that can do that already. So IoT, being battery operators, low power WAN, we were able to go in, take the pulse off the meters, and get all that data into the cloud. And once it's in the cloud and it's accurate, reliable, and consistent data, what happens then is you can work the magic on that then. So, I mean, they were feeding that through API then, which is just a fancy name for a gateway. They were feeding that then into bigger systems out there that actually was all about calculating carbon footprint and all of that. So that's how we got into IoT. And then we moved into water and gas. And then people just started solving other issues for them. COVID came, commercial buildings closed. And we decided, right, nobody was interested in sustainability right then. And it was all about monitoring air quality, which got us into that sector. And again, IoT solved that for us. And then, health and safety aspects, Legionella, the monitoring pipes. So that's kind of how things moved for us and progressed. Peter Klinker, do we think the big decision makers, for example, CFOs, CEOs, are fully aware of the advantages of IoT? And if not, how do we spread the word?
I'll take that, Karen. That's a great question. So what's happening here is non-financial data is going to be as important as the financial data that CFOs have to sign off on. And the various regulations that are coming in both the EU and in the UK is driving this. So increasingly, the chief financial officer or the finance director is going to have to sign off on a whole raft of utility usage data. And as and when that regulation and those changes come into force, they're going to be highly concerned about the accuracy of that data. As I said, that it's accurate, consistent, and auditable data. And that is going to drive, they're going to say, well, am I going to prefer something that's automated and that's producing consistent data, or is somebody going around with a clipboard going to be good enough to gather the data that I need? And I think everyone knows the answer to that. They're going to want to spend money on getting much better quality data. To answer Peter's question, are they fully aware of it? I don't think so. I don't think so. And that's partially because the need for better quality sustainability data is only bubbling up now. I'd say it was around there a few years ago when the pandemic maybe took people's eye off the ball, but it's very much there and people are getting very concerned about 2023. as and when the new wave of EU taxonomy reporting comes into vogue, and people saying, how are we going to get all this data, and how is it going to be auditable, and how are we going to prove to our FD that we've made a good attempt at getting good quality data for them.
Okay, thanks. John has come in here just to explain, finish off that sentence or paragraph. John's point here, it is difficult to explain that to the clients. Also, the client either doesn't have or won't pay for the M&E expertise to read the data on a live basis or weekly basis and to analyze and quiz the why, where, how, etc. from the data. You need a person with a really good knowledge and experience of M&E and HVAC to drive change after the data is recorded. That is a problem at present. Clients don't seem to be looking beyond the data gathering phase. So thanks for your comments, John. Gavin is saying, are dashboards generic or are they customizable for each customer?
The answer for our own product there, the answer is yes to both of them. We strongly believe in open source systems and interconnected systems. And we in ZiggyTec work for a lot of big firms, and in truth, they want to take the data we gather and collate it with the other data sources within their portfolio and add it together and add it there. So a lot of people just take our data and move it onto other systems, but other people then use our dashboards, which are customizable, and take that data and use it.
Okay, Akhil has a question. Does IoT help in predictive and preventative maintenance of the equipment?
Absolutely, IoT is great for that. One of the best ways of doing predictive maintenance is vibration monitoring, and having a wide source of vibration monitoring equipment on your equipment, and that really helps with predictive maintenance. Again, to an extent, that technology, just core vibration monitoring, has been around for decades and decades and decades, but it's been very expensive because it's generally been wired powered solutions. But the equipment, IoT equipment, is so much more cost effective now that you can place these devices over a whole wide range of your plant and get straightforward predictive maintenance signals out of them. I just want to answer the question. John's very good point was clients don't seem to be looking beyond the data gathering phase. Yeah, it is a big problem. It is a big problem because ultimately people, and it goes back to my earlier point, people will need to roll up their sleeves and improve their M&E and HVAC systems. So I think the data will drive that. It will definitely drive that, but it's taken the time, and I suppose maybe it's John's point is it's very slow to move, but that's life.
Peter Klinker, how easy it is to introduce IoT devices into a building, old or new?
Well, I hope it came across in my presentation earlier on. It's very, very straightforward now. If you select the right technology, and go back to the book, just reiterate what I said, you need to get these, they need to be self-powered, battery, solar, or inductive charging, and they need to be wireless. And once you get that right, the speed and the cost effectiveness of implementing them are just there. That's how it works. I suppose a lot of other systems in the past may have fallen down because they didn't adhere to those principles. People that just stick in devices that run off Wi-Fi, which are very power hungry and all that, won't be robust enough. It'll just be problematic, and it gives the IoT a bad name. But they're few and far between now. Like, good practice is to use what we outlined earlier on, and there's plenty, not just ZiggyTec, there's plenty of other providers that are using for good practice now.
Okay, thanks, Peter, and thanks, folks, for your questions. Is there any other burning questions for people? We'll give it another while. Has anybody else got any questions while we're here? And today's webinar was just kind of introduce IoT has been used, you know, in our industry. And, you know, we're here for any, our information's up on screen there. We're here for any questions you have. But you just want to have a one-to-one with us, our phone numbers are there, our email addresses, and you can access Peter or myself at any time. And what we're hoping to do then is from today, get a better understanding and idea. And if there's any topics you want covered in the future, please send them and pop them into an email, and we'll cover them going into our series of webinars through the winter. Okay. So if there's no other questions, we'll wrap it up then and let everyone get to lunch and get back to work. And thank you all for attending. And on behalf of myself and Peter, just want to thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, guys. Talk soon.
Thanks.
Bye.